Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. This is the study session for the City of Cathedral City City Council for Wednesday, June 10th, 2026. And we will start this meeting with a roll call.
Councilmember Gordon?
Here.
Councilmember Ross?
Here.
Councilmember Lamb?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Gutierrez?
Here.
Mayor Gregory?
Here. Next item on our agenda is agenda finalization. Are there any changes to this agenda proposed?
There are none.
All right, seeing none, we'll move on. The next item on our agenda is public comments on non-agenda items. So this is the opportunity for members of the public to comment on any items that are not on our agenda. Your comments will be limited to 3 minutes. And just a reminder, we do enforce rules of decorum, so no cheering or booing or clapping or anything like that. We want everyone to feel free and make their public comments without any harassment. With that, we'll start with our comment cards. I see a number of them have been entered into the system, so I guess I'll go ahead and start calling them. The first is Beverly Banzuelo. Good afternoon.
Yes, hello. Yes, I live in Mountain View Apartments, and I'm just so concerned about fire hazard over the radio station. And I'm just, 4th of July coming up, and I'm just scared to death that there's homeless people that live there, and it's just a bad area and bad sore eye, and I just would like for them to take care of that area. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, next on the list is Angelina Normandy. Welcome.
Hello. I'm concerned about what's going on in that radio station. It's all the debris from the trees are up against the wall, and there's people living in there, and I'm just concerned not just about us, but the people that live around that whole area also. It's a really serious fire hazard, and that's what my complaint is. I hope we can get some help and get this done and over with, because August is around the corner and it's going to get really hot. And I appreciate taking the time and all of you being here to listen. I appreciate it very much. Thank you. Have a good
Thank
day.
you so much. Next on the list is Denise Brennan.
Hi, I'm Denise Brennan, and I am a resident at Mountain View Apartments in Cathedral City. And I'm here today with a group of residents, and our concern is the persistent hazardous conditions at KGX Broadcast Center. And the tamarisk trees on that property are way overgrown. And under the trees is a really deep pile of those tamarisk needles. And in the branches, it's just thick. And the trees hang over on one whole wall right next to all the houses that are right there and the carports. I mean, if that catches on fire, it's gonna burn that place up. So the fencing around the front on Dinah Shore and Via Altamira is lined with about a 5-foot hedge of dead, broken down branches. There's holes in the chain link fencing, it's falling over. And homeless people hang out there. There's mattresses laying in that debris, that maybe 1 to 2 feet of debris. And those trees, they're like fast growing. It doesn't take long before they're back again because they're not indigenous to this area. And they also have like an oil in them, I guess, in the needles and in the bark. But there's like 280 residents in Mountain View Apartments. We're all senior citizens and disabled people. And a lot of the people, they really are bound in those apartments. You know, unless they have a caregiver during the day, they really don't have anybody to get them out of there. and the fire department would be completely overwhelmed if anything ever happened. So we're really happy that you guys are here to listen to us, and we really hope that something can be done before a disaster happens. Because even one person that I talked to, because a lot of times the people there, they kind of are quiet, they're afraid to say anything. I used to be the manager there, probably 10 years ago. But one of the people told me that during the winter, there was some homeless people in there with a tin can, and they had lit it on fire. They had a fire going in there. So my apartment's right up front now, right next to those trees. So thank you, guys.
Thank you for your comments. All right, next up is Elizabeth Cuniff.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Thank you for hearing us this afternoon. I've been in touch with many of you, I think, in the last few weeks. I'm the one that's been on TV twice, KQED interview.
Barely hear you.
And,
Miss, can you please speak up
haven't
to the
got-
microphone a little bit?
excuse me? Okay, thank you. Okay, so I don't have much to add to what Denise was saying. She brought the pictures. You can see the pictures. It's highly flammable there. Any spark, any ignition at all could set the whole thing up. And this is not hyperbole. This is reality. We need your help. And I think the majority of us would agree that, you know, between the American Tower Company that leases the land, it's a 2.7 acre parcel, I believe, and the difficulty is between the owner and the lessor. The lessor is the tower owner. The owner is a completely different entity, and between the two of them, neither wants to take responsibility for cleaning the property. So back and forth it goes. We would, I think, be really, really happy if the city would just move in and do something. Just take the bull by the horns before we are out of our homes and maybe not survive, you know, not able to survive this. So thanks for your time. I appreciate you coming and to listen to us. And I think a couple other people have comments, so I'll yield my time to them.
Thank you so much. Next up is Eric Lizama.
Good afternoon.
Welcome.
I live in apartment 1B, which is towards the front of the apartments on Dinosaur Drive. And I'm a constant walker going to the Food for Less shopping center. That's where I go to do grocery shopping, as well as going to Jack in the Box. So there's a tree trunk, not a tree trunk, but a pole or whatever, that splits into two, with the pole or tree in the middle. And before I used to be able to go on the left side where the trees are, but nobody cuts them anymore. So I got stuck in my head or my eye, you know, because of that, from the branches. So I'm not really too savvy about the fire hazard, but there are a lot of dry trees in that vicinity from KGX radio station. So I would appreciate that something be done about it. You know, especially when I'm walking down the sidewalk and I get stuck in the head or eye. So, okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, next up is Danny Lee.
Good afternoon, Council. It was refreshing to see in the agenda for the regular council meeting, the next one, your recommendations for commissions and committees. A couple of years ago, I think it was, Council Member Ross said she wanted to open up these bodies to new people rather than rely on the same old volunteers over and over again. I appreciate the time all members of the public commit to this work, but we do indeed have many old faces, this one included, volunteering. Ideally, we should have a broad mix of people representing different age groups, ethnicities, and work status that could provide their own particular input to commissions and committees. So I'm especially encouraged by the appointment of Colby Gregory to the Planning Commission. Here is a young man with a young family who grew up in this city. Who better to reflect the needs of young families? He was built a thriving business here and can also attest to the planning needs around developing our commercial sector. Similarly, I'm excited to see Eric Castillo joining PACE, another young man building his life in this city and a busy businessman. I talked with Eric recently and joked that his next step might be to run for president in 2028, to which he replied, "I'm not eligible until 2036. I believe he may be our first commissioner born this century. The average age in Cathedral City from census data is about 40. I don't have all the dates of birth, but I'm pretty sure the average age of the council and most commissions is much higher. I hope the trend to greater diversity continues, especially with younger career residents who can share with us the real challenges associated with living in our city and running a business here. And I hope in future we can move away from so heavily relying on old retired guys like me." Thank you.
Thank you, Danny. Next up, it says R. Navarra. Is that correct? Come on up. Navarro? Navarro, okay.
Hi. Well, I wanted to say thank you to you folks for putting up that little dialogue session we had at the library last night. Very helpful. Got to know what people are caring about. And the two subjects I wanted to review are in Anna's notes. So I'm going to bring up the subject that I didn't get to speak about, which was the codes, how it's affecting me personally with the heat. My neighbor did everything according to code, but now I am living in my backyard with what my neighbors call the IMAX screen. Instead of seeing Mount San Jacinto, I see this big white wall, and it's, to code, it's 5 foot from my property line, and then my bedroom is about 8 foot from my property line. So in the really intense March heat wave, I knew what was coming this summer, and I knew what I'd thought ever since I saw the thing going up. It's another heat island, and we have a propensity for just passing through heat islands. Everything we do, build, think, say, should be based on the existential threat of rising heat. Every code needs to be adapted to that. I know we've got to face what Sacramento needs us to do, but there's ways to get around it, and I'm asking you to please look into it. Our codes need to be designed for survival in the heat, with access to trees, close shade, shelters. I know you're taking action on this with Cynthia Schultz in the lead, but that is a 16-foot high wall on top of a 3-foot increase in grade that is going the whole length of my property line, 3/4 of my property line. And so when I look out my window now at night, I see my neighbor's bathroom windows lit up. That doesn't bother me, I can adapt to that. But there's also the light factor. You know, I used to really love to go out every night and see the stars. So I don't know what the code is on light factors, but the main problem is its proximity to my building, which is heat. So these heat islands are being promoted by you folks unknowingly. So let's see, I'm getting close to, I'm not going to be able to do my little spiel on the date palm situation, where, I'm sorry, the Cathedral Canyon situation, where we need to reduce the amount of cement if we're trying to accommodate people to walk more. That new project that Rita's behind, we could add greenery. We could lessen the cement, and we could have the greenery from the existing residential area there, the mobile home park. It's already green there. There's a way to adapt that. All we need is a little crew to go in and some choppers,
All right.
and we've got green.
Thank you so much.
All right, you're welcome. Thank you.
Mayor Gregory, we do have one more request.
All right, would you call it, please?
Sir, if you'd please approach the lectern, and if you would like to state your name for the record, please.
My name is Primitivo Trujillo. I I border the property of the KGX radio station. All of these ladies have talked about that earlier. I think there's a lot of code violations there. It's been there for many years. I brought it up to code enforcement, and nothing has been done. I would like to see the city get more involved in this. There's all kinds of fire hazards. The trees that grow there are brittle, they're dry. There's a lot of needles on the ground that could, sometimes kids that get in there, I don't know what they're doing, but they could start a fire. I think it'll be almost impossible to contain that fire. Those branches are so big, those trees, I don't know, maybe they're like 60 feet tall or something. They're tamarisk. I approached, when KGX was broadcasting out of that building, I approached the manager. There were people there every day. I pointed out some of these problems. I said one of these branches could fall into the street. Somebody could be in their car driving by or maybe sleeping in their car. Sometimes people like the shade of those trees and they'll spend the whole night there. It could fall in a car and kill somebody. And he says, we have insurance. That was his attitude. These people, I think, are from out of state. They don't care about Cathedral City. They don't care about our neighborhood. So they're difficult to work with. I guess they're in for it for the money. They're probably making money renting out those big antennas to the cell phone companies. And so it's very difficult to work with them. They don't want to get involved. They don't care about us. I'm hoping the city can look into this and help us with that. Some of those trees could actually fall all the way across the street and fall on a house, on the apartments. They're that big. They could damage the houses. So I'm hoping the city will follow up on this and we'll work with you on that.
All right, thank you so much. And
Mayor, apologies, I forgot to
see
start
it.
the
Thank you to all the residents that have come and spoken to us. I know we hear you, staff hears you, but it's helpful when you come and share the urgency, so we appreciate that. All right, I see it. Come on up, Dorian. I see Dorian is waving his hand, so I was just going to close public comments, but come on up, Dorian.
Okay, sorry about that. I just changed my mind last minute. But today I want to bring up the Sunline Transit.
Well, we
bus
do have a
stop.
presentation. The next item on our agenda is Sunline.
Can I give a comment after that?
You
or-
certainly may. I'll make sure we call on you.
Okay. Okay, sounds good.
Thank you. All right, anyone else on a non-agenda item? All right, then we'll go ahead and close public comments and move on with our agenda. And our first item on the study session agenda is a Sunline presentation. Mr. City Manager, would you like to introduce the item?
Thank you, Mayor. So this is a continuation of a discussion that has been presented to Council before on Sunline's Rides Reimagined program. This is their phase 2, and they're conducting outreach with cities across the valley, and they're here tonight to give a presentation to City Council on phase 2 of Rides Reimagined. And with that, I'd like to introduce their CEO. And Mona, would you like to take it from here?
Thank you, Andy. And thank you, Mayor Gregory, Mayor Pro Tem Gutierrez, and I want to also acknowledge our Sunline Board member, Nancy Ross, and it's good to see the other council members here as well. Thank you for having me. I'm Mona Babauta. I'm the General Manager for Sunline Transit Agency. And I'm going to go ahead and click through the presentation. As Andy mentioned, we're here to talk about Sunline Rides Reimagined. It's our initiative to reimagine our transit system here in the Valley. And I was here a couple months ago to talk about phase 1. And, oh, here we go. Yeah, so phase 1 started last year, actually. The full process is about 18 months. And the first phase went from roughly October to the end of February. And during that phase, what we did was we looked at a lot of data. We looked at our ridership system performance data, and we also did a lot of public engagement. We went out into the communities. I came here. We did an extensive survey process. And so out of that process, we were able to gather information that then led us to phase 2. And in phase 2, well, sorry about that. Let me just talk about the process, if you don't mind. So in phase 2, what we did was we started drawing lines. So we took all the feedback that we got in phase 1. We got information from citizens about how often they take the bus, where they want to go. We asked them questions essentially that gave us a sense of whether or not they would want a ridership-based system, which meant a lot of the service would be concentrated in higher density locations, but they would see the bus come a lot more frequently. Or if they wanted coverage-based, which is pretty much what we have right now. So in a coverage-based scenario, the bus goes to a lot of places throughout the valley, throughout our service area. And again, our service area extends from all the way east by the Salton Sea and North Shore to the west, Palm Springs and Desert Hot Springs. And when we got that feedback, we produced 2 scenarios, and I'm going to go over those 2 scenarios today. And I'm sorry, I keep clicking on this clicker, and I should be clicking on these arrows. And I'm going to go ahead and just jump to the survey findings. So here are some key survey findings out of phase 1. About 60% of those who responded, they do not take Sunride services today, which was not surprising. Right? We live in a very vast valley. Again, our service area goes from the Salton Sea all the way out here to Palm Springs and Desert Hot Springs, Cathedral Cities out in the west as well. So very extensive, very hard, I will admit, to take public transit, especially if you're going from one end to the other. So people naturally do a lot of driving in our valley. Not a lot of density as well. So normally in an area that isn't very dense, you're going to see people drive a lot more. So this was not surprising. But what was helpful was that we got their feedback, and that was important to us. What we're doing right now isn't geared only towards those who use the bus right now. We want to hear from those who don't take the bus. We want to understand why, so that we can design a service that could possibly better meet their needs. We also heard that folks want to see the buses more frequently, and they are willing to walk a little bit longer to see a bus come more frequently. And they're also okay with transferring. So they're okay with taking more than one bus to get from point A to point B, as long as that entire trip is shorter than it would be otherwise if they took just one bus. And then we also basically found out that when you go throughout the valley, and the valley is designed in different ways. Here in the west, or in different, it's just designed differently. Out here in the west, we see a lot more density. Out in the east, we don't see as much density. And so when you take all of that feedback from all of the folks across the valley, it's pretty much split between ridership and coverage. And this is just a graphic depiction of that here. So for purposes of making it simpler to understand the data, we grouped the cities and unincorporated areas. So instead of seeing 10 different cities and about 6 or 7 unincorporated areas, you'll see everyone kind of grouped according to the Northwest region or the Western region and so on. So Cathedral City is lumped in with Palm Springs in the west. So if you look at the west, that's the second line down from the top. And the majority of our survey respondents came from Palm Springs and Cathedral City. And by the way, Cathedral City has the second highest ridership throughout the valley. Palm Springs has the first. So it wasn't surprising to us that the majority of the respondents were from the west or from Palm Springs and Cathedral City. What we're seeing there is that there's a slight tilt towards ridership, a ridership-based scenario. Meaning, again, folks want to see the bus come more frequently and have the bus concentrated in more, I guess, high ridership areas where there's a lot more high-density housing, more retail, more job centers, more healthcare. Oops. And so where do we go from here after finding out what people think about our system? We want to get a good idea of how people would like to see it designed. And so we have two scenarios that I'm going to show you, and it is constrained. It is constrained by resources that we know today. So right now, Sunline's operating budget is about $50 million. That's our annual operating budget. Our annual capital is about $100 million. But what you will see is based on a $50 million operating budget. Oh gosh, here we go. I'm gonna put this here. And so this is the existing network. As you see, it's more coverage-based, so you see a lot of lines everywhere, from North Shore all the way up to Desert Hot Springs. And currently, there are 3 routes that serve Cathedral City. You have the Route 4 that is more concentrated along Vista Chino, and it connects into North Palm Springs. Then you also have the one that is concentrated along Highway 111, and you have the Route 2 that starts up in Desert Hot Springs and connects here to downtown Cathedral City. And this is the ridership scenario. So this is one of the 2 scenarios that we're going out and getting public outreach on, or doing public outreach on. And this will also be presented to the Board of Directors, the Sunline Board of Directors, that is in July. But under this scenario, this ridership-based scenario, you'll see a red line that goes along basically Highway 111. That represents 15-minute service. So currently, in all of the routes that go through Cathedral City, either operate on a 30-minute headway, meaning you only see the bus every 30 minutes, or you'll see it on a 60-minute headway. So the Route 4 that kind of stays along North Cathedral City, that bus shows up only hourly. Under this scenario, the Route 1 will show up every 15 minutes. So pretty much good for anyone who is living along Highway 111, anyone who is working along Highway 111, shopping, or going to and from their jobs. What is missing, though, under this scenario is the Route 4. So the Route 4 is eliminated. So there's really no service for anyone who lives along Vista Chino between Date Palm and Landau. That is the trade-off under this scenario. And then also Sunride no longer is provided. So Sunride is our microtransit service. So that is meant to fill in gaps where the bus doesn't go. So the trade-off is to eliminate that service as well in favor of providing more frequent service along Highway 111. The Route 2 remains at a 30-minute frequency under this scenario. And here is the coverage base. So this is the second scenario that we're doing public outreach on, and we will also be taking this to the Board of Directors. So under this scenario, basically everything stays the same. So routes 1, 2, and 4 are still here, and they will operate under the same frequencies. Route 1 and Route 2 will operate on 30-minute frequencies. The Route 4 will also remain at 60-minute frequencies. Sunride is actually expanded and is combined with Palm Springs. So citizens here in Cathedral City will see a higher level of service on our microtransit system. So overall, under this scenario, everything pretty much stays the same. However, you lose the frequency along Highway 111 that some citizens here in this region want to see. And so we're going through the phase 2 public engagement process. We have another survey that is going on right now. You can find it online at www.sunline.org. I've also left copies, paper copies, hard copies of the survey in English and Spanish with the board clerk. And we are doing a lot of meetings as well. So if you go online to our website, you'll see all of the community meetings that are planned. We are also doing presentations to other city councils and in unincorporated areas. And that is the QR code that will lead you to the survey. So I encourage anyone with a phone today to please point your camera to that QR code and please take the survey before you leave. We are aiming to get at least 450 surveys. That will make sure that what we get at the end is statistically significant, and that's important for ensuring that whatever decision we end up making is made with credible data. And so with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Mona, for the presentation. Council, any questions or comments, please get in the queue. I see Councilmember Gordon is first in the queue.
Thank you. It's good to see you back. I'm glad to hear that you're using data to guide this decision, and I'm very concerned about the first scenario that eliminates significant transit for residents of Cathedral City in favor of, sort of running a little faster. And so as you dig into that data, I would really encourage you to think a little bit about people who can't respond to the survey, people who may not know that there's a survey, people who are using those routes. And I appreciate that you're doing the due diligence to get out there and have these conversations, but it really concerns me to see 2 services completely eliminated in favor of a 15-minute gain.
Okay.
And it's in parts of the city, I think, where people need those services.
Thank you. I appreciate that feedback. If you don't mind, Mayor Gregory, there's one more thing I want to share about those 2 scenarios. And I actually met with Andy about this yesterday, and I also want to emphasize the fact that we continue to collaborate on how we can improve transit service here within the Cathedral City. So I think it's important for everyone to know that. And it's a dynamic system, right? So whatever is on paper now is, and even whatever ends up on paper, a year from now, it can change, so it just takes some planning to do that. But one thing I do want to mention is that under both scenarios, there is no service at the B Street and Buddy Rogers stop. In fact, right now, the Route 2 does not go there. The only service that goes through B Street and Buddy Rogers is the Route 1. So there's still that connection to the senior center along Route 1. Route 2, if you're on Route 2 wanting to go to the senior center, you will need to transfer at East Palm Canyon and Allen to the Route 1 to then get to the senior center. So under both scenarios, I just want to make sure everyone is clear that there is no transit service at B Street and Buddy Rogers. All the service will be maintained along Highway 111.
Well, good thing we didn't build a super stop there. Would have been wasted money. All right, I'm next up anyway, so thank you so much, Councilmember. So I actually wanted to echo, when I saw that first map and it showed the increase for the ridership and it showed the increased frequency, I thought, well, that's a great thing because, as you said, sometimes people are willing to go a little bit of distance to then have more frequent buses come through. But I thought, well, even if it's longer, they could take microtransit to get there, but then you're saying you would eliminate a lot of the bus lines and eliminate microtransit at the same time. So you're looking at distances that are far greater than even a younger person could walk, much less a senior or a disabled person could walk. I'm also concerned because if you take out that Route 4, it will affect the dial-a-ride type service because that's limited to a certain distance from bus lines. So when you take out any bus lines in a big chunk of area, that means that not only is the bus not there, it's not eligible for the dial-a-ride service. So you would take at least half of our city population that is able to be served now would not be able to be served. So I share some of the great concerns. I think we all want to have more frequent buses, but that trade-off is pretty hard to swallow. So.
Yes, and I acknowledge that. I think a lot of the folks, you're right, the individuals who live along Vista Chino, they would be impacted significantly.
Well, I'm in District 5 in that part of the city.
Mm-hmm.
It goes down Maravilla, which then means all of those areas up there are eligible in my district and in District 4
Mm-hmm.
for the dial-a-ride service. And we have the Veterans Center there and other places, and that would all go away under this.
Okay. It's good feedback.
All right, thank you.
good
Next up
feedback.
is Councilmember Ross.
Thank you so much, and thank you for coming today. It's a tough conversation because it seems like we're losing a lot in Cathedral City when it comes to Sunline. We're losing ridership, and we are an elderly community for the most part in this area of town. And the idea of even healthy people out walking, today it was 107 when I was outside. It's painful to consider, much less to actually put it into motion. So
Okay.
I have a couple of questions, if
Okay.
this is the right time, Mayor.
It is.
What did your feedback show you about our city and our area?
So there's high ridership in Cathedral City. The one thing I do want to just mention before you ask any other questions, what I'm sounding is that the coverage-based scenario is probably the preferred scenario for the city council, because it's pretty much everything that you get today, and you get more Sunride service.
Well, in a perfect world, I think we'd like that with more frequent service, but if between the two, I think you're hearing correctly.
And that's good feedback, too.
And
So,
actually, to jump off of that,
yeah,
it is our responsibility to look after our people. That's our responsibility.
Yes.
That's why we're elected. That's why we ran for office.
Yes.
That's just paramount to who we are. So when we begin losing opportunities, when we say, well, the next bus stop's going to be at the casino, and, you're at the senior center, Raymond Gregory, he could hike that in no time at all. I'd have a little harder time. My neighbors had had a very hard time. And so we think about, how's that going to affect us? How's that going to change our lives, our opportunities to go places, and our willingness to continue communication in the community? And that's so important to older people, that they don't lose the ability to have friends and go play bingo and, things that you'd think at your age are silly things to do. But as you get older, they become the lifeblood of your communication to your neighborhood and to your city. It's so important that we don't lose that. And so, maybe we talk about alternatives or things we can do to help with this. I have a couple more questions, and I don't want to hog all the time. So, when you looked at the demographics of transfers versus directness, what did you find?
So we found the majority of the respondents didn't mind transferring if their total trip would be shorter. So essentially what we're hearing from folks is that those who want to take the bus don't want to be on the bus that long. They want the fastest trip we can give them. That is what people want, which makes sense, right? And even frequent service, they want frequent service. A lot of that is security, right? A lot of people want to know that if they forget their schedule, the bus is going to come every 15 minutes. There's a sense of personal security people have around that. And so those were two things that stood out to us, but recognizing that the valley changes from east to west. When we incorporated all of the feedback we got from everyone across the valley, it was pretty much split between coverage and ridership. Because it's designed differently. There's a lot more density over here, and a lot of people live closer to that density, or they live in that density. And so they're more interested in seeing the bus come more often.
How is that going to affect school children?
So this is not affecting school children, so the trippers stay the same. So that is separate from this service. So whatever school trippers are operating today, that remains.
And what about usage of microtransit?
I'm sorry?
The use of microtransit, will it also remain the same, or is that going to be?
Under the coverage-based scenario, microtransit stays. And in fact, you might get a little bit more service because we're combining our resources with Palm Springs out here on the west side.
Thanks. I have more questions. I don't want to hog any more of your time.
No,
Thank
that's
you.
okay.
Thanks so much. I know where to find you.
Absolutely, and you get to hear me talk about this again in July.
You bet.
But the ridership scenario is, what I'm hearing is not the preferred scenario, although if we could find more money, increasing frequencies along Highway 111 would be ideal. The one thing I do want to mention is that in spite of the fact that we don't provide service to B Street and Buddy Rogers in either of these scenarios, we are still within 3/4 of a mile of the senior center. So anyone who can't walk, they can apply for paratransit. So there is still connectivity, direct connectivity to the senior center. It's just a matter of them working with us and helping us understand what exactly their needs are.
What is the timing on paratransit? Somebody calls you and you have a car to them?
We're required by law, by federal law, to respond in a certain amount of time and process the application. But what is necessary is for them to complete the application, which requires medical certification. So that is on that's the responsibility of the person applying, to make sure that they have their application all completed, and we can help with that too.
How?
They can give us a call, we can walk them through it, and we can give them clear direction on exactly what we need to see from them and who needs to complete each section of the application. And if they need to come in, or if we need to go out to them and help them complete the parts that they can control on their own, we will do that. And we've done that before, and we've gone to senior centers and provided that service directly to folks in the community that way as well.
Thank you for now, Mayor.
All right, thank you so much. Councilmember Lamb.
So much, and I had a question about people that were not ambulatory or having a tough time, how I get there. So, but I've got another question, and that is, when you do the surveys, is there a possibility, or is that what you do, that you actually ask the people that are using the service? I mean, are these people that are only, in other words, if I respond to this, I'm not a bus rider. So it's my observation and anecdotal evidence from people that are bus riders, but the actual bus riders.
We are.
Okay, that's their.
We are.
In other words, your scenario is based on their demand, with their concerns and their needs.
Our scenarios are based on what we got out of the entire survey process. So it's a combination of feedback from those who don't take transit today and those who do.
Okay.
But we do make sure, like in this second phase, we are actually going we're going on the buses. And we are asking people as they're riding to complete the survey with us.
Okay.
During the first round of public engagement, we actually posted up at key bus stop locations with high ridership and made sure we got their feedback as well.
Okay.
And it's important to note, we got over 1,900 responses in the first round.
Wow.
Which is the best response rate we've ever gotten, at least since probably in the history of Sunline. Every time we go out and do a survey, we're struggling to get a couple hundred completed. But in this case, we got over 1,900. So that said a lot about everyone's interest in making sure that we're designing a transit system that best meets the needs of this valley.
Right. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Mayor Pro Tem Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, thank you for your presentation. One thing that I want to do is thank you for listening to our residents. Last time you were here, there was an issue on B Street and the bus route that goes through B Street. And I've talked to the residents, which some of them are here. And you did listen, and you did go by there immediately right after the meeting to take care of their concerns and to see if they were truthful or not. And I'm sure that you are working on it, and thank you so much for listening to them. Now, regarding scenario number 1, losing a route through Cathedral City, I agree with my colleagues. I think it will be very hurtful to Cathedral City residents, especially since it goes right through Visachino, like you mentioned, Visachino, Maravilla, and also 30th and back to Daypalm. And since a lot of our ridership is for Cathedral City, losing one route will be very hurtful for our residents. I wish that you can come up with somewhat a little bit in between, because I also love that you are looking into cutting bus times, the routine when they come around. That will be, but I did go on your website earlier today, and I checked the bus routes, and I also did see, and thank you for mentioning also the route change on B Street. But I did check all the routes, and I'm very excited to hear that you are listening to our residents and to the ridership throughout the Coachella Valley. And it really warms my heart that you are taking care of our residents. Now, how often do you take a look at the bus routes and assess them as to future changes?
So what happens now after we get feedback and direction from the board on the two scenarios, we're going to ultimately end up with a final scenario that will best meet the needs. We probably won't make everyone happy, but it'll reflect the majority of what we heard throughout the entire process. After that, we make service changes every 3 months.
Oh, okay.
So we're going to use that final report as a basis for making service changes, but every time we make changes, we watch the performance of our routes. And we make tweaks depending on whether or not we see if they're running on time or not, or if ridership is a little low, and maybe it'll help to move the route a little bit over to the left or to the right, for example, to get the ridership back up. So pretty much every 3 months, we're looking at what we're doing to figure out if we could do it better.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you. And I will go on the website and take the survey.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, we still good for now?
I'm good for now.
All right, then let's go ahead and do some public comments. And Dorian Whitney, I promised I would call you first, so come on up.
All right, thank you for hearing me out today. I don't know why it's not really being acknowledged that we used to have 15-minute service on the 111 while also having the Route 4. So I guess that is concerning that certain people don't know that, but I definitely do think, that's a downgrade if we went from 15 minutes to 30 minutes, so we should at least have that back. If we had it before, why downgrade? And also the fact that our budget is 50 million, it should be 150 million at least, because we approve, and Mayor Gregory, you're on the Riverside County Transportation Commission, and you are constantly approving projects that are always millions and millions of dollars, but only cater to single-person vehicles. So I think that's just not fair, and I do think people should go with the ridership option. And then regarding B Street, I think that the lines should stay on 111, and I think right in front of the clock tower would actually look really nice, because the buses are actually starting to look really nice without the ads and stuff, and the artwork that's on there. So if we glorify the buses, more people are gonna take it. So we should put it right there in front of everything. So yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dorian. Are there other public comments?
I have none, Mayor.
Is there anyone in the public that wishes to speak on this item? I see a hand. Go ahead and come up. If you could give us your name.
Yeah, my name is Federico Carrillo. In regards to the B Street, are you guys still going to build something there? Is that still moving forward, or I heard
So this
that-
isn't really question and answer. It's more of for you to provide us comments about what you think or what you would like to see.
Definitely like to see that bus route moved down to 111 and free up that street from noise and homelessness and everything that's occurring due to the bus line.
All right, we hear you. Thank you. Anyone else? Come on up. I If you could please give your name.
My name's Anita Creel. I'm a resident. I live on the corner of B Street with my father, who's 83 years old. I will say, we were here a couple months ago, and I do want to thank Sunline. They did listen to me and my family when I said, hey, take a walk, take a look. I know this is more about Sunline and how it affects rideshare and all of that, but some of the side effects of improving rideshare, improving, I think it was like a super hub or something, building that, it affects the community and the neighborhood. What I have noticed over the last couple of months, an improvement because of some of the shelters being removed, some of the homeless people or in the drug dealing that has happened in that corner, it seems to have kind of minimized. I have seen an improvement of more patrol, so I do thank the police department. But in regards to the city and maintenance, the drug paraphernalia is still out there, the needles, the garbage, the human fluids, the dirtiness of that area where the basketball court is. That still needs a lot of attention. So these are comments that I'm making because of the area, because of what we're talking about. But definitely, I think having a route on 111 makes it more visible for some of this stuff not to happen. I mean, I have my 12-year-old son that lives there, always wants to play basketball, and he's not allowed to because of the danger that is at that basketball court. That's affected because of everybody that's loitering by the buses. But again, thank you to Sunline for listening to us. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your observations and sharing. Anyone else? All right, thank you. I'll return it back to council. Any other questions or comments? All right, I know this is a project that is in action and continuing, so hopefully we better understand where you are, and hopefully you've heard some feedback from us and from our constituents here, and that will help you with, as you continue to try to make the ride better. We do very much appreciate it. Thank you. All right, we'll go ahead on to the next item in our study session, item 2B, which is the Development Code Update, Public Review Drafts, Status, and Next Steps. City Manager, would you like to introduce the item?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So this is a major milestone for the city's Development Code Update. This project has been underway for roughly 18 months or so, and we've had the public review draft out for about a month. So this presentation really is to get council up to speed on everything to this point, major changes through the Development Code Update, and as well, a reminder, a refresher on what hasn't changed, and that's our vision as articulated through our general plan. So this afternoon, we have our planning manager, Cynthia Schultz, and we also have our consultants. We have Brent and Michael Gibbons here in the audience available to provide support and answer questions as well. So with that introduction, I'll turn this over to Cynthia to lead the presentation.
Welcome, Cynthia Schultz.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, good afternoon, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and members of City Council. I've already been introduced, but thank you very much for your time today. I am very pleased to present to you information on the process of and the current status of the Development Code Update. So this is about a 2-year-long process from the kickoff until its adoption, and as you will see, the preparation leading up to this effort actually began a couple of years before the project officially took off. My presentation's about 15 slides. It's pretty dense in material, not a lot of pictures, but if you have any questions, feel free to ask me, or you can save any questions or comments at the end. I will be asking for comments and feedback along with your questions at the end. And as City Manager mentioned, we do have our consultant who is much more familiar with that specific drafting. So if you do have questions for them, I know that they rearranged their schedule for this afternoon and have to get on a plane. So if there's any questions, I'd like to direct them to them before any questions for me.
That sounds good. Council, if you have any questions on the current slide, feel free to just chime in, and then we'll do formal questions at the end.
All right. All right, so long before the city officially recognized the need to update the zoning code, the challenges were well known and well documented. In 2024, City Council introduced or included the zoning code update within their strategic plan. They included that here as goal F1, along with several objectives and milestones for the update that you see detailed here. Those six objectives intended to modernize the code and improve its effectiveness and its implementation as an implementation tool. Now, this slide, I know it has a lot of material on it. It's not intended to be an R-chart test. These were taken directly from that plan. I will go through each of these individually, but what I wanted to highlight here is that the presentation will describe the process, summarize the code that is currently under review, and more importantly, demonstrate how the proposed changes advance each of these 6 strategic plan objectives. So we'll start with the first one. The first one is the objective design standards. So this includes developing clear standards that address state housing legislation and also help the city maintain a compliant housing element and eventually move closer to achieving our regional housing needs assessment, otherwise known as that lovely term RHNA, our RHNA goals and allocations. The second objective is to modernize our commercial standards. So the existing zoning code doesn't anticipate current uses such as things like logistics operations. It doesn't anticipate things like neighborhood markets, dog daycares, and entertainment and dining uses that have really evolved over the last several years, especially since, those kinds of uses that have evolved since the COVID pandemic. The next objective is design guideline integration. This is very closely related to the first, which is objective design standards. You usually have either design guidelines, which are very aspirational and pretty and very hard to measure, but look lovely on a piece of paper, on a drawing. But what we're aiming for is objective design standards. So once we have objective design standards, they will be fully integrated into our code, which is the portion of the municipal code that guides development code and development code operations. I want to take a moment just to point out very briefly that right now, the development code or the zoning code is codified in Title IX of the municipal code. There are many other divisions or titles of the municipal code. This is merely one of them. This doesn't have anything to do with like cannabis operations or animal control regulations or anything like this. It's only specifically land use and zoning. The next objective is the concept of permit streamlining. The purpose of this is to improve the clarity, the predictability, and the efficiency of permitting while maintaining appropriate public review and decision-making authority. Removing additional meetings in the process and delegating that review authority to a single committee or to a commission or even to staff makes more effective use of time and resources, both things that we are short on today. The purpose is to shift decision-making from individual projects to the standards instead, right? So the standards that govern the project reviews. Instead of looking at the details for each project, we set the standards by which we review each project. It's also about removing undue process burdens. Question becomes, why require 2 permits to review the same project? Why 2 decision-making bodies if it makes as much or more sense to simply have those reviews done by a single body? A fundamental goal of this update is to align our development code with the goals and policies that were adopted through the general plan and associated housing element. The 2020 general plan, actually the 2040 general plan, but it was adopted in 2020, represents a multi-year public engagement and detailed technical study evaluated for state environmental compliance. It was endorsed by the Planning Commission and adopted by City Council. So in many ways, this development code update and housing implementation goal may not be as exciting as streamlining or modernization, but it's one of the most important reasons why we're undertaking this update. The general plan includes a number of elements, about 13 of them, and it addresses issues such as housing, land use, community design, circulation, economic development, public facilities, parks and open space, environmental justice. Again, there's 13 of them in total. And they establish the city's vision for growth and development for a 20-year time span. Again, we adopted it in 2020. It's supposed to be good for 20 years. It's a 20-year planning horizon. The development code is the city's fundamental tool for implementing that long-range vision. If the general plan tells us where we want to go and how we want to grow up in the future, the development code is the tool that helps us get there. And last but not least, state law compliance. The state legislature keeps us all very busy, and while planning has done a great job of trying to amend the code to keep up with all of the new laws, there are recent changes the code hasn't kept up with, and there's outdated language that really deserves a legal refresh. So prior to the city issuing the request for proposals, or otherwise known as the RFP, for this development code update, staff had already begun a laundry list of items. It's an ongoing feedback loop for the existing zoning code from a variety of sources. The items identified from these sources reinforce many of the objectives that were later reflected in the city council's strategic plan, particularly those around commercial zoning modernization, streamlining, and design guideline, objective design standards in the state law compliance. Over time, the zoning code really outgrew its functional purpose. It had become outdated, cumbersome to administer, and in some cases conflicted with other regulations or the general plan policies, or state law. We were saying no to things we needed to say yes to, and yes to things maybe we wanted to say no to. The code no longer effectively supports the objectives that the City Council and the community expect it to achieve. Excuse me, I went too fast. The purpose of this identification and data collection process was to create a roadmap. So this is sort of our checks and balances that'll lead us to a functional, modern, and forward-looking development code. These issues ultimately help define the scope of work and the priorities for this update. All right, public engagement. So public engagement kicked off in the spring of 2025 with the first public workshop in March. Immediately following that, the team of staff and consultants from Minter Harnish led us on 3 walking tours starting from various points in the city. Preferences for what to keep and what not to keep were recorded during these tours. Shortly thereafter, the consultant launched a dedicated website, which is zonecathedralcity.com, shameless plug, zonecathedralcity.com, website on which an online survey and a Maptionaire mapping survey were also launched. Dozens of surveys were also collected during the Taste and Sounds events in 2025. The consultant held several stakeholder interviews. Mostly those were held with local business owners and developers who use the code and are most intimately familiar with the code and the challenges that it poses to their projects and applications. The city also assembled a steering committee comprised of community leaders and also city delegates. The steering committee meetings were also attended by our economic development and public works to ensure that we had cross-departmental collaboration and that whatever product we would end up with would be feasible under all codes. Code sections, after being reviewed by the steering committee, were then submitted to Planning Commission and reviewed by them in a separate meeting. The course of the steering committee and Planning Commission sessions lasted several months, as each meeting was devoted to a single topic for discussion. After rounds of review and feedback from these groups, the public review draft was launched on the website zonecathedralcity.com back on May 14th, just a few weeks ago. Hard copies of the code were made available throughout City Hall. Those hard copies include a little informational infographic inside the front cover that tells what this is, what this is for, what you're looking at. It also includes a QR code so that people could link directly to the online copy if they so desired to do that. Since April of 2025, when that zonecathedralcity.com was launched, the website itself did receive over 5,200 site visits. It's a lot of site visits. I would recognize it's a whole 15 months, and we don't have timestamps for when those comments or when those visits were logged, but that's pretty good. While public review and comment period runs from May 14th through June 12th, which is just a couple days away, there was also a public workshop last evening that was well attended, during which we received a lot of comments. I'll cover a little bit more of the public comment summary in a few slides, and along with addressing what is next. I want to emphasize that this is a public review draft. The engagement period for this draft is a point in time. Once we've collected comments, the Planning Commission has discussed and considered those comments, a new version will be issued. We expect that we accept public comments throughout this process up until the document becomes the final version. And we have to do that. We have to sort of say, okay, this is when we have to have this done, because as we move this forward, it needs to go through what we call CEQA review, or the California Environmental Quality Act. So it's subject to that act, and it needs to be reviewed substantially complete. But we can make changes up pretty much up until then. I also want to point out that the consultant has done a fantastic job of doing all of the materials in both English and Spanish. I told you this was a lot of information. A couple other things. Staff also engaged residents during community events. We were also at the Esperanza Park opening. That one was really fun. You'll see some pictures from that later on. We also attended the State of the City event back in 2025. So we were trying to get the word out to everybody. I think when we did Taste and Sounds, the most exciting part was giving away the shirts. Ryan, I need my Pride shirts. They really like those. Let's see. All right, so key changes. I want to talk about the key changes. As I summarized in the individual meetings that we had with each council member, there are five areas, I guess, there are 5 summary slides, summary points of where the key changes can be categorized under. So I have a series here of 5 slides that summarize those in a little bit more detail. So one of the primary reasons for this update, again, was to align with the development code, vision, goals, and policies of the city. Long-term stuff, not short-term stuff. I mentioned this earlier, but it bears repeating because it's a key reason for this code update. The general plan establishes the city's vision and direction. The development code is the primary tool for implementing the general plan. While the general plan establishes the direction, the development code translates those policies into zoning districts, permitted uses, development standards, design requirements, and review procedures. So what we've done with the development code here, as you can see, is simplified a lot of the elements that were in the code. We simplified zoning districts, and aligned zoning districts with allowed densities. We've renamed zoning names so that they coincide with their functional abilities. Instead of having things that are CTR, which to most people don't make a lot of sense, we call them things like general commercial or professional office or residential high density. Well, residential with the density number associated with it. What I wanted to point out too is that we are retiring several obsolete uses, including the phrase draying. If anyone knows what draying is, well, I'll tell you, it's the transportation of goods by horse-drawn wagon. Now, the code was adopted in approximately 1984. I don't know that we had a lot of horse-drawn wagons at that time, but if anyone is proposing to establish one of those uses now, would be a good time to let us know. But seriously, what we also want to know is what is not changing. As the city manager mentioned, we'll talk about what's not changing, right? Several things are not changing with this code. The zoning is not changing. So the intent is not to rezone the property in the city. In an effort of this scale, we're making a wholesale change of what we have, but omissions are possible. But this is why we're seeking public review and comment at this point to identify issues and make corrections before the code is adopted. What else is not changing? Again, the vision for the city. I really want to emphasize this. There is no change to the vision for the city that was established in the general plan. What else is not changing? The feel and the character of our residential neighborhoods. One of the things that we heard from the people on our walking tours and through all of our surveys is that they love how Cathedral City feels, how they experience the city, how they can walk around in our city, and what it means to them. There's a tremendous sense of meaning and place associated with Cathedral City. We aren't changing that.
May I ask you a question at that point?
Yeah.
How does that play into unified downtown districts and to mixed use?
Sure,
If you're wanting to mix use it and people like it the way it is, you know.
Yes, so, and I'm glad that you asked that one, because that one's particularly cumbersome. So right now in our downtown area, we have two zone districts. We have an MX, which is mixed-use commercial, and then we have a DRN, which is a mixed-use residential. Instead of having two mixed-use districts, make them into one, right? So what I was explaining in our Development Services Review meeting yesterday is that sometimes mixed use occurs site-wide, sometimes it occurs where there's commercial or non-residential on the lower floors and the residential above. Sometimes it occurs in the same building, sometimes it occurs in the same block. We're trying to encourage it any way that we can get it without saying, well, you have to have a residential component and you have to have a commercial component. We're making this into one unified district so that it makes more sense.
Does that also make it absolutely open to anything?
It doesn't. It doesn't. So we still have limits, right? There's still things that are prohibited, right? We won't allow draying, for example. We won't allow, say, like a logistics operation in our MUDTC.
A data center, that's
Yeah.
what everybody's talking about. Not here,
Well,
but
I
in
wasn't
other
going to
cities.
say that, but, you know, we wouldn't allow, you know, a warehouse or a big box store or a large format retailer, auto dealerships of any nature, you know, those are just not appropriate for mixed-use downtowns. So the notion of zoning isn't going away. Zoning
No, our
still is.
downtown has a car dealership.
What's that?
You know, Ford Motors.
Oh, yeah, yeah, exactly. So there's a place for car dealerships, and then there's a place for things like retail and things like residential and high-rise residential and more of a single-family residential and cottage residential. They're different. That is the heart and soul of zoning.
How do you do that? So kitty corner from that Motors, Ford Motors, is and I'm not exactly sure exactly how they call this, the Desert Marigold, which is a low-income apartment complex. I'm going to call it, it probably has a different name. Those kind of don't jive into that.
Yeah, and so they're actually, you know, that's a whole different deal. They were an existing building, and it's a little bit of a one-off because they proceeded under a state law that allowed them to proceed as what we call a single-room occupancy or a low-income, affordable housing development. So they were allowed to go into an existing building.
But we want to do a lot of low-income housing.
Yeah, and there are state laws that allow for, help streamline those kinds of things, aside from the zoning. And there are incentives that are allowed by state law as well, things like density bonus and the subdivision laws that allow for, help incentivize affordable housing aside from what's allowed.
I'll try to get my head to quit spinning. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, of course. Any other questions about that? What else wasn't changing? So the other thing I wanted to mention about what isn't changing is that there's no citywide increase in development intensity overall. So the code, again, going back to what's spelled out in our general plan, state law requires that everything that's in our code needs to align with the general plan. The general plan is our governing document, if you will. All right. So the next significant area of change is a significant modernization to the code is the incorporation of objective design standards and more ministerial review. So what this delivers are three key functions. Predictability, right? Reducing time and risk for applicants from proposals are within specified parameters. Things like heights, density, parking, massing, scale, overall design features. The second feature is efficiency, and that's to lower costs to both applicants and the city and the reduced demand on resources for reviews, administration, preparation of materials and reports, and operating by known deadlines and delivery schedules. Thirdly, and perhaps most importantly, is compliance. These specifications align the city's regulations with state laws and also advance our housing element. The process for objective design standards means if a proposal meets the known quantity or specified criteria, as I was mentioning, things like height, density, parking, among other items, it can be approved without further delay. Staff level approvals or ministerial approvals still require clearly adopted standards, consistent application of those standards, and judicial review in the form of an appeal. So if something is not held to the proper standard, there's still an appeal process for that. Staff level review does not remove legal due process, rather, it shifts the decision-making from a subjective review of an individual project to an objective application of an adopted standard. So it shifts that review upstream. An example of this, well, I kind of gave you an example of that shift. But projects that comply with those standards may then proceed through administrative or ministerial process. I want to make a distinction here because administrative approvals still involve a level of discretion that in evaluating a project against adopted standards, and they require some level of professional judgment, whereas a ministerial review would be more like something of a building permit, I think is a very good example where, you know, they submit their site plan, they submit all of their measurements, they check, stamp, it's approved. So there is not the same level of professional judgment or discernment between whether something complies or whether something does not. Those are the primary differences between a ministerial approval and an administrative approval.
So if I may ask, and you may, if you're going to cover this later, let me know, but I think this ministerial review is part of the goal, and it's part of the concern of both of these, because I think that we want to have certainty for people that want to come and develop here, and we want to streamline the process for that, but shorten the timeline, shorten the cost for them, you know, make it so that developers that are developing desirable developments, you know, find that easier. But then there's the other concern about, well, are things going to get approved without transparency, without public input, when public input should probably be sought? And if something is ministerially approved, is what kind of notice is there? So if, and the right to appeal by the public, if something should get approved, and then, you know, people should have concerns that they want to be able to raise. You know, we can say, well, they could appeal in a certain amount of time, but if they don't even know that something's been approved or what the particulars are of that, I think those are some of the concerns that I'm hearing and share, although I know it's a balance, because you can't say, well, I want to streamline it with ministerial review and then say, but everything's going to go in front of the public, because that's sometimes part of the issue now, is that can be cumbersome on projects that would objectively meet standards, and there is no real reason for them to go, you know, through public review. So I don't know if you're going to.
No, and you're highlighting a very key friction that's occurring, and I want to point out too here that the city's not going out on a limb with this. This is not only a statewide effort, and this has been a growing effort and a growing trend, I think, with moving away from more subjective reviews and discretionary reviews and approvals for exactly the reasons that you're describing, and trying to move those decision and approvals more like a blanket statement of, hey, if it brings these things to our city, if it meets these standards, if it has these things, if it checks these boxes, we'll be okay with it in these limited areas. And that way it takes out the sting when a project is notifying the neighbors, and oftentimes if the neighbors don't even know what the notice says, they get excited because they got a notice. So I think that is part of the process. And that's why I wanted to also talk a little bit about the difference between administrative level review versus a ministerial level review, whereas administrative review, because there is discretion involved in that, administrative reviews are subject to appeal, whereas ministerial reviews are generally not. So something that is check the box doesn't have a review.
So that would require you to be very thoughtful and thinking about a lot of different scenarios when you develop what those boxes are, if something can just come in and get checked the boxes.
Yes,
So
you're correct.
Seems like that would be that's where the rubber meets the road there. So as long as all of that's really done very well, it works. If that's not done very well, where somebody can come in and build something that would not be desirable, but still kind of meet the boxes, then I think that's a concern.
Yeah. And I think you're pointing out another piece too here is that our objective design standards of what we have proposed in this draft apply only to mixed use and multifamily development. So I say only, but that only leaves really sort of single family type residential, smaller than 4 units attached or on a site, and then commercial development. So they do not apply to those types of uses, but they apply to the other ones, which can be, ends up being the whatever goes in the mixed use downtown, right? It could be a very, up to 50 feet, or whatever the standard is for the downtown neighborhood.
You're saying that would be ministerial, those.
If it meets the design, the
Again, that's what I'm
objectives.
saying. Well, that could work, but that
Yes.
ministerial process then would have to be very well thought out. And,
You can get a little willy-nilly.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
I think that's where the concern is. So, and maybe the concern is not based on anything because you know that it is being thought out and it's being based on what's worked in many other places and with customizations for here, but there is concern, I think, about that.
And we understand that. Thank you. Good question. All right. Another area of significant change, they're all significant changes, let's face it, is the modernization of our development standards. While our zoning determines what uses are allowed where, our development standards influence how those uses look, how they operate, how they function, and how they interact with the public realm. These standards address parking, circulation, pedestrian access, shade, landscaping, open space, recycling and trash enclosures, drainage, and many, many more things. The update also seeks to create more meaningful landscape and shade standards that result in functional, usable spaces rather than simply meeting a numerical requirement. And I have been working, or at least gained initial feedback from our Public Works, Deanna, to talk about making sure that she's involved in this and weighing in on that section as well. A key objective throughout this effort has been to ensure that development standards do not inadvertently make redevelopment, adaptive reuse, or infill development functionally or financially infeasible. The city needs standards that improve project quality while allowing existing sites and vacant properties to be reused and reinvested in. Very, very important. Particular attention has also been given to landscaping, shade, and parking requirements. And as we heard in public comments, that landscape and shade are huge in our city. Heat island effect is a real thing. They're critical tools for addressing the extreme heat that we have in the city. The city must also, once again, balance these benefits with the inherent costs that go along with providing those improvements.
Can you expand on that just a little bit?
Sure. Anything in specific or just in general?
Well, no, so when you're talking about parking solutions to support different needs, are you talking about, getting rid of asphalt for an example, because it causes so much heat? Or are you talking about, making sure that you bring in a minimum amount of greenery, or are you, take it from there?
Okay, so from there, not reducing the asphalt that goes underneath the car. So parking spaces are still going to be parking spaces, but reducing the enormity of parking area that we have. So one of the things that we heard during those walking tours that we took from different places is that we had some areas of the city that were really overparked, meaning that there was a lot of pavement out, this expanse of pavement that's underutilized.
Target.
Yeah. I don't want to point any fingers.
No, but that's
So-
one that we always point to.
Yes,
That's true.
Exactly. And so how do we create opportunities to reuse that? Either reuse the space, and honestly, let's be real, retail is not coming back the way that it used to be here. We're not all going to the store for Christmas shopping anymore. So, redefining how we calculate our parking needs is one of those things. And then also the opportunity, and I did this in a presentation, I think most of you were here for that presentation almost 2 years ago now, where I talked about having the opportunity to redevelop parking areas into something new. So I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but that's another one of those things that we're talking about. Then with our enhanced landscape and shade, what we want to do is create more abilities or more opportunities, better measurement and statistics, metrics for how we provide shade and how we get that shade to cover more expanses of the pavement that does heat up. There's no way getting around what you have to have underneath the car. I think John would agree with me on that, but as much as I'd like to just be able to park it on anything, we're not going to do that. So, does that help answer?
It's a good beginning, thank you.
Yes, we also have flexible parking regulations so that we're trying to promote flexible parking, meaning shared parking opportunities where people can park off-site, where they may be able to park in like a parking district, not a formal parking district, but something along those lines so that they don't have to provide so much on-site parking for their development. That's a very 1980s concept.
Thank you.
And then the next major area of change is the modernization of our planned unit development, which we refer to as PUD, and our subdivision regulations. Our existing PUD is very complicated and very complex, and it was intended to be an incentive, but it actually works somewhat as a barrier. So it's not working the way that it was intended. That needs to be revamped. And then our subdivision regulations are really a collection of past ordinances and resolutions over several decades. So we're streamlining that into one single piece and then aligning that under our development code. And then the final category of changes really focuses on the usability, the clarity, and the administration of the code. While these updates might be less visible than changes such as consolidating zoning districts or improving our standards, they're important, especially to my staff, because they really appreciate these two graphics. So the image that you see on the left is a tabular format of our zoning district for our residential zones. What that says, and you don't have to read this necessarily, you certainly can, but what it does is in a graphical format, in a single look at me, you can tell, okay, if I'm in the R10 district, I can see all of the uses that are permitted. This actually goes on. It goes on much longer than this. This is just a snippet. But it tells us in a tabular format what's allowed and what's not allowed. This makes it so much easier for our counter staff, and it makes it much easier for our applicants and homeowners who have questions. The image on the right is this was lines and lines and lines of text that were consolidated into a single graphic. Hello, a picture says 1,000 lines of text. So this is a trash enclosure example, which was very difficult for people to understand. Here's a picture. Doesn't this work a lot easier than having to read all that code? So these are just those simplification standards that I was trying to describe. So to summarize what the draft development code update achieves, again, all of these things tie back to the ones from 2024 City Council Strategic Plan, establishing the baseline objective design standards and so on. Beyond these specific improvements, I want to also acknowledge that the development code establishes a modern framework for ongoing code maintenance and continuous process improvement. Part of the reason that our code got so outdated was that it was so hard to change. Rather than a one-time correction, the draft creates a foundation that can evolve with changing community priorities, state requirements, and development trends while maintaining consistency with the city's long-term vision. It always, always, always comes back to that. So we've discussed why the city initiated this project and what changes are proposed in the draft. Excuse me. What changes are proposed in the draft? And the next question is, where do we go from here? I see we're a little out of order. Where do we go from here? So the public review draft represents the second complete draft of the development code update, reflecting more than a year of review and refinement. It's in its final public review phase. The document was released in mid-May, has been distributed through multiple channels. An open house was held last night. Written comments on the draft will be accepted through June 12th. Following the public review period, the Planning Commission will continue its detailed review of the draft code. They actually have a 2-day workshop next week where they will be hopefully rolling up their sleeves and getting hefty with this thing. It is a big document. It's 450 pages. So the staff and consultant team will then prepare the draft document for formal hearings and consideration by City Council. The document will then continue on, as I mentioned before, through comprehensive outside technical review to ensure its compliance with CEQA. And then 2 areas of deeper research and consideration are anticipated in late July. One area of continued work is the enhancement of landscape and shade standards. Again, back to Cathedral City's heat and the importance of addressing that. We recognize that we need to have a really good way of measuring how applications are proposing to meet shade requirements, how they're proposing to perform ongoing landscape maintenance. One thing we want to make sure that we are not doing with this code is having people put in a bunch of bushes that they don't maintain and they don't take care of. They shut off the water to it. They don't trim them, etc. We want code standards that help, not just code compliance go out and issue violations. That's not what we're after. We're after compliance. We're after lovely landscapes, and we're after good environments for our public.
Are you
And the
open to
other-
things like shade structures and?
Yes,
and
yes, so
what they
that's
call
an-
the big triangles, you know, the big, what are those called? They have a name for it.
Yep, like shade sails?
Yes,
Yes.
sails, thank
So we have a consultant who'll be working on how much proportion of structure, whether that be a pergola or arbor or something of that nature, shade structure, versus how much should be organic material. What trees, what species of trees are appropriate. We've had multiple conversations with the steering committee members and with planning commission members about fire loading and the fuel content of different tree species. Someone was talking about tamarisk. They're terrible because they go up like rockets, I guess. And other trees provide much more fire hardening. So those things are yet anticipated to happen. And then the other area that we're talking about bringing back for consideration is also what we're calling a mixed-use incentive overlay. The intent of this mixed-use overlay is to create incentive-based opportunities for housing and mixed-use development in appropriate locations. Again, ensuring that it's compatible. These won't necessarily be ministerial considerations, but they will be in exchange of a land use right for a public good. So that's the big bargaining chip that the city has. Instead of us rezoning everything and saying, you can do anything anywhere, we're holding something back and saying, you bring us something and we'll be able to give something. But we need to have all of that to as much of a degree as possible spelled out in a code so that it is clear to staff, it's clear to whoever the decision-making bodies ultimately will go in front of planning commission or city council, and it's also clear to our applicants as well. So the major policy framework of the code's been established. The remaining work is focused on refining the standards, completing the tools, improving the usability. All right, so that does conclude my presentation. And as I mentioned at the beginning, staff is seeking council's additional guidance and feedback at this point. Our consultant is here. I think they have just a little bit of time before I think they have to catch their flight. So if we have anything specific for how the sauce got made, we can ask them, but I'm here to answer any questions and take any feedback and guidance.
All right, thank you so much, Cynthia, for the presentation. Council, this will be the time for questions or feedback before public comment. And I see Councilmember Gordon is in the queue.
Thank you. This is a lot of work, and it's obvious you've put a lot of work into it, so thank you for doing that. And thank you for making sure that the process engages a very passionate public. I think one of the most exciting things about this is that people are excited and engaged in development code. And that's something I think very special about our city and our people. So congratulations on that. I think that's a big deal. I have 2 questions. One that we've sort of touched on a little bit previously, and that I just want to sort of reiterate the concerns that have been voiced on the sort of ministerial review pieces and the concern that there's going to be a loss of public oversight and input on that. And just to reiterate that I think we want to ensure that, yes, there's efficiency, yes, there's streamlining, yes, it's easier to come here and develop here. And we want to make sure that we are not giving away anything that, sort of betrays our responsibility to the public and to oversight. And so You know, as Mayor Gregory said, that's sort of where the rubber meets the road, and I think it's going to be essential for us to really be intentional and deliberate about the way that that's done. And, which I don't think anyone's suggesting, but that what it is not chiseled on a stone tablet, so that as we learn, we are not able to change and course correct. I think that's an essential piece of that. So that's number one. The other piece is sort of the data center-sized elephant in the room. I think we should take a lesson from our colleagues in Coachella, and I think we should consider pulling the data center piece out of the code, taking some time for staff to do some research on that, to look at the implications, to look at the parts of the city that are currently zoned for data centers, and be deeply intentional and responsible about that. And I think we have watched this in the public discourse over the last several weeks, and I think it would be a dereliction of duty if we did not look at that with some deep scrutiny. And relatedly, I think, from my perspective, I think we should look at a potential moratorium on it. So those are my two big pieces on that.
Great, thank you.
So if I may, I want to bolster some of Cynthia's comments on ministerial review. And I want to share that there is a difference between ministerial review and administrative review. So we have an obligation to follow state law, and the state has directed that certain projects are ministerial in nature, and we have developed a code that contains objective design standards for those qualifying projects. So if a project that requires ministerial review meets the standards that are in the code, that is reviewed ministerially, that is reviewed without discretion. The code also contains administrative review of some projects, and this may be the minor use permits. This may be design review where there's not a conditional use or a change in zoning or a specific plan. There is a delegation of authority where there are standards in the code and staff may act on that. That does involve some discretion, and those decisions are appealable. The ministerial, those are not. That is a ministerial, there's no discretion. But administrative review, those are discretionary. And there are appeal processes that are built into the code. And I think as we look to implement the code, it is incumbent on us to find ways to create that transparency, to create that openness to our processes so that the public understands what work is going on in the city. We have a development dashboard today, and that is something that we can continue to look at augmenting to provide access to the public as to what's under review, what is administrative, what is going through a discretionary review processes. There are ways that we can continue to look at the implementation of the code in a manner that maintains that public access to our work and ensures that those appeal channels are available.
Great.
All right, Councilmember Lamb.
Thank you very much. That was pretty impressive. Good job. So here's this paragraph, and I'm going to read it. It's on page 7 in our council book. It says, to further support redevelopment opportunities and housing objectives, the city is also pursuing, and you mentioned this, the mixed-use incentive overlay framework intended to encourage reinvestment in strategically located mixed-use and residential development opportunities consistent with the general plan and housing element. The intent of this effort is to identify practical implementation tools that support housing production, corridor revitalization, adaptive redevelopment opportunities while remaining consistent with the city's broader policy framework. So that's a lot. I tell you, I had a couple of sodas through that one. So I'm a realist. So here I'm just envisioning the former Walmart site. Could have a lot of uses, could be done a lot of different ways. Just for my example. So let's say my vision is to have, as a council person, as a resident, to have a townhome development with a parking garage in the back, layered parking so it wouldn't have all the asphalt, and have a tree-lined corridor walkway and planting in the front and dog park and everything. And they walk right over to Food for Less and have all these amenities and wonderful. So that is a picture that I have in my head. So what are the opportunities? What's going to happen that's going to make developers say, come up with this idea and use what's changing? That's what I wanted to see. What's the practical thing, what's the realistic thing that's going to happen?
So
Does that make any sense?
Nope, that makes
Okay.
absolute sense, and
Okay.
I apologize for those overly planner-esque
Okay,
sentences.
I'm
those I
not,
used.
not in my thing.
But two things I want to draw attention to. First, that mixed-use overlay incentive plan is still under development, right? Right now, it's the brainchild of a few people who have thought, you know what, when I came to council a couple of years ago, Member Gordon wasn't on council at that time, but when I presented at that point, I was saying, look at all these cool things that we could be doing on some of these underutilized vacant sites, right? And since we kind of we really wanted to use that as a sort of launching pad of where are the opportunities with this code development as we move this thing forward. How do we do that with an incentive? And I'm going to harken back to Stone James presented a resolution. This predated me, but I thought it was brilliant. I think it was Resolution 2257, where in that resolution he said, hey, developers, if you're going to bring us anything where there's primary jobs or there's affordable housing, we'll give you these certain things. Let's expand on that notion and let's make it more formalized. That's the kind of thing that we're looking to do. Developers, when they come to us, they come to planning, right? And they ask us for a bargaining chip. And really, we don't have much to bargain with. We have a code that's pretty usually, for most intents and purposes, black and white. We want to be able to have something that's baked into that says, well, here's a menu of options you might provide for us. Housing has to be one of those things. So we have excess housing that was contemplated in our North City specific plan, in everything north of the 10, I'm just going to call it that. We have excess housing that was contemplated in our general plan in our CEQA. I'm going to use the acronym there, but why don't we spread that around some of these infill sites where we might get 15, we might get 6. We might get 6, we could get 20, we could get 30 different units, whether it be townhomes or something else. But even if they did a mix of income ranges, that would be terrific. Everything is going to move. Everything that we do is going to help move that needle on our RHNA outcomes. And if we can get something started, somebody else says, oh, look what Cathedral City, look what that developer did over at the Walmart site. We could do something like that at the Burlington site. They build on each other. But just having a formalized incentive where a developer understands what the trade-off looks like, it's a tremendous start. That's what we're looking for. And that was, actually, this was codified in, I'm sorry, that's another planning term. It's put into a similar idea was put into the La Quinta Code. And when I looked into that, I thought, well, this is a brilliant idea. If we could just flesh this out more to make it, give it some feet and make it look like an actual possibility, that's our intent.
I mean, isn't it as an incentive? Could it be that they want to come in and build townhomes with a parking lot, and we'd say, we as a city, we could actively work on a grant for urban greening, and we'll see if we can get that and collaborate with you and have this project and have it a green space and a dog park.
It could be something. It could be something like
I don't know
that.
what incentives are without it being city land.
Yeah, and we don't, we've got some ideas what those incentives might, so I can give you an example of a state incentive, and this is a really simple one, but the density bonus, right? So if somebody says, well, I can by right there, I can do 20 units per acre, if that's what the right is, and I can build 20 units. But if I make some of those units affordable, now I can get more units. And that's a recipe, or it is a prescriptive incentive where it says, if you do this specific thing, what we want to give them is more of a menu, that if you do one of these things, we'll do one of these. It's similar to what I was describing as a PUD, which is also a flexible land use document, but we don't want everybody coming through on a PUD going, well, we'll give the residents a swimming pool if we can have reduced setbacks. That's not a good trade. We want to make a better trade.
Thank you for the examples.
Yeah, of course.
Interesting. Councilmember Ross.
Thank you. I just have to start off with the elephant in the room. We can't talk about data centers anymore. Quit talking about data centers. Everybody quit talking about them. We don't have enough electricity or energy to sustain them long-term, and Desert Hot Springs is voting theirs down tonight. So when we talk about energy and electricity, do we have that ongoing relationship with CVAG's Energy and Environment? With a Katie Barrows, who does nothing but works on how to keep asphalt cool, or how to build, a better mousetrap to not use asphalt, those kinds of things. Those folks are happy to work with you. They're free of charge, and they have some great ideas. So if you haven't already, I hope that you make that long-term association with them. And Tom Kirk would be your contact there.
Thank you.
And that's it. That was it for me. Oh, just that we want shade and not so much wind and no asphalt.
I'm doing what I can about the wind.
Thanks.
If you
We all
would work
are.
on that, please. So I'm next up, and I expressed some of my concerns earlier, and I appreciate what's going on here. And I did want to talk about the elephant in the room just a little bit. And I want to say, first of all, to the public, I'm not a fan of data centers. I didn't really know what they were until not that long ago. And now I see horrible drawings, I guess they would say, on Facebook, giant buildings with generating heat and sucking the water and generating noise. And then my understanding is there are some back east where there aren't maybe so many environmental laws that now people are drawing on from experience. So I think it's certainly a good thing that it's up for discussion. And I think, of course, what's happened in one of our neighboring cities, which is probably a poster child for not doing things in the back room, non-transparent, those type of things, which are things many of us preach about over and over and over again. I'm very concerned, of course, any code would have that in there, but I also don't, one thing I appreciate about the city and council is we don't necessarily have to jump on the bandwagon all the time, just because other cities are suddenly doing something, because as far as I know, I don't see even under our existing code where somebody could come slip in a giant data center, resource sucking, heat generating facility right now anyways. So I know it's popular. I see it. Paris is also working on one. A lot of them are like, we need to do a moratorium on data center. And I'm putting that in quotes, data centers, because I have never seen that totally defined either. And I'll get back to that. Just because other places are doing it and they're horrible, because I'm thinking, well, I don't know what a data center is. So in this building we're sitting in right now, we have rooms that are full of data equipment that use a lot of air conditioning. I'm saying a lot more than maybe other areas to cool them because they need to stay cool. Are those data centers? So are we saying we wouldn't allow a building to have a computer room of size? And then, so what are we going to do about our own? Are we talking about something that's over a certain magnitude? To some of this, I think, as much as we rally against CEQA when it comes to some of the requirements, when it comes to especially transportation projects and other projects, it would seem like CEQA wouldn't allow some of these monstrosities that are concerns anyways. And even with what happened in our neighboring city, it didn't get very far, because once it did get in front of the public had a chance to weigh in. So while I appreciate the idea of a moratorium, it seems like that's I want to jump on that bandwagon from you too. I think while you're working on the code, you might take the word, because I see the word data processing centers in there. If it needs to come out, it could, or somebody could come by right, say, well, this parcel is eligible for data processing centers. I mean, you wouldn't want to just eliminated in the sense that now it's a use that's not defined in the code. And so then, different people could look at that and say, well, this is a not defined use, so maybe it is permissible here. So it would seem to me that it would make more sense as you're working on the code, if it's not already in there, to very strictly define the level of public scrutiny very early on anything that was of certain size, that used resources, that generated heat, that used a lot of electricity or water, that made a lot of noise, because whether that's a data center or 5 years from now, some other name of something where giant robots come and then do something, or anything that causes those kinds of issues, it would seem like those would be early on public scrutiny type items, not permitted by right in any zone.
And you're touching on a couple of different things. You're touching on the vulnerability of not having it at least defined in a code. If you define it and you say, well, this is what it is and this is what we don't want in some way. I mean,
You don't want, or that if it is proposed, it's got to start from scratch, and it's going to have to go in front of everybody, and it's going to, something like that seems to me more important than a moratorium. Usually a moratorium is something like, well, they're coming right now, so we got to put a 45-day moratorium. We're not even going to consider them because the way our code is right now, they could just start proposing one right here. I don't know if that's the case for anywhere here right now. So that's why I say, although it's popular to publicly say our city is doing a moratorium, to me, that's more fluff than substance, and I'd rather we focused on substance. And I'm not against moratoriums. We've certainly done them before with short-term vacation rentals or cannabis, things that were getting out of hand, but it doesn't seem like we're there quite yet. So that's just, I'm just throwing that out because I rode on the van with a number of public officials from different cities today to Riverside, and I heard some of them, and I got the impression from some of them is, well, they think that their city might do it just because everybody else is doing it and the public is outraged and is expecting it, although they can't, they're scratching their heads, and when you ask them, well, why? Is it going to happen? And they're like, no, but public's suspicious, and there's conspiracy theories out there that if there's a warehouse or a storage, building being put up, that the city's somehow gonna, behind the back, allow that to be permitted as a data processing center. Although I don't see anything in our code that would allow that, even existing today. I certainly wouldn't think that would be ministerial. And I know a lot of this is coming from what happened in the neighboring city, where it was clearly, in my opinion, mishandled, and there was a lot of discussions, at least, there appear to have been, or at least, and proposals that did not have early public scrutiny, and that is one of the problems with that.
And that's a problem. And so again, you're pointing out a vulnerability. Our current code, again, one of the things that I mentioned, and they asked me not to talk about that. They asked me not to say data center, but since you've already mentioned it.
I'll call it a resource-intensive facility.
Resource-intensive facility.
Energy sucker.
Yeah, well, whatever the uses, the code that did not anticipate those uses there is currently a provision in there that allows for someone, an applicant, to come in and say, well, we don't see this use listed. How would you classify this? And ask for an amendment to the code. Now, if they do that, they have to make sure that they can make that the staff can make
And that's a public process.
That's a very
You can't
public
do that
process.
administratively,
Cannot do
and you're
that
not
behind.
proposing in the new code that would be
No,
done
that is
administratively.
correct. That is correct. And what I might suggest, and it's just a thought, is that, we do have a whole section in the code. It's called it's Division 4. It's uses for specific, standards for specific uses. And so it talks about things that are of more sensitive nature, or that have more significant impacts, or specific impacts that can be mediated through some very specific uses. So one of the things I might suggest is that if the city wants to go in this direction, that we look at creating very strong, intentional thoughtful, specific use standards that would pertain to that, because the way that the draft is, and again, this is a draft, this is not what's necessarily being proposed for adoption, this is generating discussion, which is exactly what we're asking for. If you all sat and nodded and said, thank you very much, I would be very nervous. But we're talking about a controversial issue, and that's a good thing, because at this point, the way the draft sits is that with a conditional use permit, an applicant could come forward. But what that does is it requires that an applicant and staff find together that there are significant findings that are made that make Planning Commission feel comfortable with the level of public input. It's not anything that can be, again, done ministerially. Conditional use permit cannot be approved by staff. They have to go through a public hearing process. They go in front of the Planning Commission and appeal, and if the Planning Commission says, no way, we don't want you doing this for these reasons, the applicant appeals, that appeal then goes to City Council, and City Council will have to make those same findings to overturn that decision.
Okay. All right, thank you. And if you're getting feedback, I think you've already heard, I would encourage that there be this, this type of use or a related use to these data processing, at least be dissected, and that it is added to that sensitive use list with certain requirements that are quite stringent just to get considered. To me, that's what's going to make the difference in the long term. Just doing a moratorium, right now because everybody else is doing it and the public is afraid. We need to educate the public so that they're not afraid that could just suddenly happen here in Cathedral City. But I don't really think that that's a good place to devote our time and energy, unless something changes and somebody can point out something different. So, all right, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I happen to agree with you 100% when it comes to that. I have no idea what a data center is, but if something will come up, would that be an administrative approval if a developer come on? So that would come, like you said, that's definitely a debatable to the public and something the public would have to find out, correct?
Yes, correct. And I want to be absolutely clear on this for you, for all City Council members, and for anybody from the public. Currently, they're not allowed. In the proposed draft, they're allowed with a conditional use permit. A conditional use permit cannot be approved administratively, has to be publicly noticed, and it has to go in front of Planning Commission. Planning Commission then has to make several findings in order to approve the conditional use permit. So I just want to be really clear about that.
And to add to Cynthia's comments, that is only in the industrial zone district.
Yes, that is correct. Thank you. That's a very limited.
You're saying that's the only place it could even be considered?
That is correct.
Correct, yes.
Thank you. I think our time can be better spent in other issues than working on a moratorium when that's not even in the foreseeable future. And also, the development code is something is missing or something is terribly wrong in it. Is that a living document? Can it be changed?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm glad that you asked that question. I tried to allude to that in my presentation. We never want to think that we're going through all of this process and all of this feedback and all this and thinking that we're going to adopt something that we have to fix. But we already know that, I've been through this. Our city manager has been through this multiple times. We've both been through this. It's not our first rodeo in any sense. You find minor errors, you find bigger things that are overlooked, omissions occur. We can change that. There's always a process to amend a development code. It's not a simple process. We don't want it to be a simple process. We don't want it to be just so easy that somebody can make data centers approved ministerially. We don't want that to happen, so it has to go through a public process. Everything is done in light of day, so if we make changes, whether it just be to some language to clarify language, or if it's changes to a permitting, or changes to what uses are allowed, or changes to standards, those all have to go through a public process.
Now, did we get anything in the development code update regarding a color scheme for commercial properties or large income residential buildings?
So you're talking about two different uses, and when I was talking about the objective design standards, so I'm going to answer your question in two different parts. Objective design standards, right? When we talk about those, they're going to come through. If we have our objective design standard, if it's a mixed use building, mixed use structure, or a multifamily structure, then they wouldn't go through any sort of committee review. Commercial does not get that same liberty at this point. It would be lovely if we could do that with commercial as well, but I think there's a level of sensitivity because we end up with a lot of sort of smaller commercial properties that appear one color one day and then a different color maybe, I don't know, maybe this chartreuse green on a building. I'm not saying that there is one, but we want to make sure that those go through some sort of level of review. We are proposing that we have as I mentioned before, we refer to our DSC committee, our Development Services Committee, another committee that would be able to look at that and say, you know what, we think the city will be fine with this color scheme of this subdivision, or excuse me, this shopping center or this building or this restaurant. Or we can give them feedback on it so that it's not just decided by myself or by a city manager or by another staff person. We never want the level of responsibility to make a aesthetic decision to rest in the hands of one single person. It should be in some sort of committee.
Thank you.
All right, council, anything else before public comment? All right, we do have some speakers already registered. The first of those is Danny Lee. Thank you, Cynthia.
Council members, again, as you know, I'm the current chair of the Planning Commission, and so I wanted to indulge myself with a few comments about the involvement of the Planning Commission. This has been a huge project, still ongoing. It's involved hundreds of hours of work by dedicated staff and by consultants. But today I wanted to take a moment to talk in particular about the involvement of the Planning Commission. I think all 5 of us have been excited to be part of this project, addressing the city's planning needs for decades to come. We won't be doing this again as a whole project, I hope, for many years. Each member of the Commission has probably spent hundreds of hours of their personal time, not just in meetings, but in studying and researching issues. Especially impressive is the dedication of 2 people who have not just volunteered their time on the Commission, but have doubled up by serving on the steering committee. Those 2 commissioners were Rich Malakoff and Vice Chair Daniel Mead. They both have careers in addition to their volunteer work, so they were doing 2 sets of volunteer work and their own careers. So I just wanted to recognize them for that. Commissioner Malakoff's appointment wasn't renewed, so he won't be joining us for the last few months of this project, but I happen to know that he remains very committed to the success of this development. So as we start on this next phase, I personally feel proud of what we have all achieved in this draft document. Oh, I should mention Mayor Pro Tem was on the steering committee too, so he doubled up too.
And we do thank him.
All right, thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Our next speaker is Richard Altman.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Councilman. It's a long day today. I'm not here to complain. I'm here to compliment the city manager and assistant city manager for bringing the codes basically up to date. I have some problems with the new codes. As a developer, has been in the city since 1979, and I have a project that's still on the books to try to get it approved. It's 6 years. Okay, so I know what about dealing with the codes. You have a major job of reading the 500 pages and knowing what it is. It's the roadmap for the city to survive. If we do it wrong, we're not going to survive. If we do it right, we'll get businesses back to Cathedral City. This building was built in 2000. That was the last time the codes were brought up to date. We have people that represent the city, that it's just a job, and they don't push it through or bring it to the council. Since Pat Milo left the city, things fell apart. If each one of you want to know about it, I'll tell you individual. I don't have to tell it to the public. I'm a city guy. You know what I do. I'm 4 years. So read the book and understand this presentation, because you need to be a doctor to understand everything, okay, and all the pitfalls with it. And they do a terrific job. I give Andy and Annie, they do a terrific job trying to get it done. It's not easy. It's trying to make up for the mistakes that prior city employees have done. Okay? So I've been here, and if you need my help, since I've been an operator, developer, and my restaurant was the first building built in 15 years downtown. And what I had to go through to do it, without Charlie, it would have never been done. And it cost me twice as much to build it. So if you've got a developer coming into the city and gets this, he ain't gonna build. He has his skin in the game by putting his money down. Remember that. Nobody's coming and getting a free ride. Today, to build something in the city or any place is very expensive. So I'm on your side, and you got a great team. And just read that book, which is going to take you a couple of weeks to understand it, okay? Because you have to go, and also you got state law involved. They overrule everything, so you have to look at that too. Thank you. Have a great afternoon. It's been enjoyable. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Richard.
Thank you, guys.
All right. That's all I see for registered speakers. Is there anyone else in the public that wishes to comment on this item? Are you coming up, Sunshine Herrera? Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, Russell Council. I need to be honest today, I'm frustrated. Not because the city is updating its development code. I believe this work is important. I'm frustrated because I do not believe this council has exercised the level of oversight that a document of this magnitude deserves. This development code is over 400 pages long and will become the rule book that governs development, housing, business investment, redevelopment, property rights, land use decisions in Cathedral City for decades to come. As residents, we've been told staff, consultants, technical advisory groups, steering committees, and the Planning Commission spent months reviewing this document. Yet I am concerned that the full City Council has not had the same opportunity to thoroughly review the actual changes being proposed. What troubles me is that the people who will ultimately be asked to vote on this document do not appear to be the people who have spent the most time shaping it. The detailed review appears to have occurred through staff, consultants, advisory groups, and appointed bodies, while the full City Council is only now being presented with the product of that work. At the same time, one of the stated goals of this update is to expand ministerial approvals and reduce discretionary review. That means staff may be asking for additional administrative authority through a process that was itself largely driven by administrative review. Before authority is shifted away from public hearings, away from the Planning Commission, or away from future city councils, this council should fully understand exactly what powers are changing and why. I am asking this council to schedule a dedicated workshop or retreat, properly noticed and open to the public, to review a red-line version of this document before adoption. And I'm not meeting a summary, I'm not meeting a PowerPoint presentation, I'm meeting a full review of the actual changes. For every modification or new regulation, council should at minimum know what language was added, what language was removed, what language was modified, why are the changes being proposed, whether it was required by federal law or state law, whether it is recommended by staff or whether it is recommended by the consultant, whether it is recommended by your planning commission, or whether it is simply a policy choice being made by the city. The public should not have to guess. Council should not have to guess either. This document will shape every future housing project, every future business investment, every future redevelopment project, every future tribal development proposal, every future allotted land development proposal, and every future land use decision made in the city. Long after every elected official in this diocese, every staff member, every consultant, and every planning commissioner involved in this process alone, this code will still remain. Future residents will live under it, future businesses will invest under it, future property owners will develop under it. Future city councils will govern under it. This document is too important to simply be received. It deserves to be understood. Thank you not only for your time, but hopefully your understanding. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And please rest assured, we have had the copies for a while, and as you heard in the presentation, we have had individual meetings with staff, and we're just at the beginning of the process, but we do thank you for your comments. All right, I see someone else. Come on forward, and you would please give us your name.
I'm Brian Boyer Hoffman, a resident of Cathedral City.
Welcome.
And I wanted to second what Sunshine said. I think that the code, even if it resulted in more delays or more time to review, I think it's really important to be very clear about what's in the code and what the city will have going forward. My other comment will be on data centers. I just wanted to say I found it really disingenuous that you guys would say that you don't know what data centers are or that you don't know the risks involved, because they're kind of an existential threat to where we are in humanity. They're like the last breath of capitalism is using all our water, all our electricity, all of our air, all of our noise. And not that there isn't one proposed, but a moratorium sends a message. And I think it's really important to let the people know that we are not interested in any form. We don't want it connected to our utilities. We don't want it anywhere near us. So having something that specifically says data centers as they exist in a super center, millions of square feet, there's evidence all over the country right now. Aaron Brockovich has a whole website devoted to tracking them and where they're going and how they're popping up. And I just think it's really important to make note of them and to educate yourselves on what a data center is, because they're really terrible. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, any other public comments?
Mayor, I do have one comment that was submitted for the record.
Yes, please, if you read
Okay,
the
this
summary.
record was submitted to the City Council. It was made available at the entrance. Erie Knox expressed his concern related to the current public review process and offered recommendations.
Thank you so much. All right, I'll return the matter to council. Any other questions or concerns?
A quick comment.
Go ahead.
Yes, of course, this document was brought up by staff that we needed to do the development update code. And of course, this is state law, and we must do this. And it's way overdue. A lot of the regulations that are in our current code date back to probably 20, 30 years ago, that we used the county's development code. The county has then actually updated its own development code. Now, we are lacking way behind. So this is state law that we must do this. Now, a lot of ministerial approvals have to also be done because of state law. It's not because whether we want to or not. This is state mandates. So there's little that we can do, but we must come up with a development update code. Now, I have been involved in this development update code from the beginning, just like we did, or actually staff. We found out about it, but I've been to every single meeting, read all their information, so I'm not completely going to this blinded. I'm actually have read and know a lot of this information myself, and I'm sure my colleagues have read a lot of it. Of course, they're not developers themselves. They're not going to understand every page that is here, but I'm sure they have taken the time to know what this document is about. And they might need a little bit of additional information, but we're not naive, and we're not just taking this as a regular document, and we're not paying attention to it. We are. Thank you.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. I've been seeing on social media things like you need to come because the council's adopting the development code and it hasn't had good public review. And I'm thinking, well, this is what this is. This is review, public review. That's what we're doing right now. You could look at this like a workshop. We're going through sections, and this isn't the only one. There'll be more of this, and it's still open for public comment. So, and it's not scheduled to be adopted if everything goes well until maybe November. So I think there's a misconception that we're at the cusp and since it's been published, the draft has been published, that it's up for adoption. It's not up for adoption. This is public review, and there are opportunities for public input, and it may, in some sections, be completely different by the time it gets around to being adopted. So thank you, Council, and again, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Gutierrez, for your involvement in the ad hoc. But yes, all of us are reviewing it and continue to review it, and we have copies. So the public can be rest assured that we're reviewing it. That's what this process is, and also the opportunity for the public to come in and share with us their concerns. And so we appreciate those of you that are doing this. All right, so city manager, this is for feedback to you and to staff. Do you feel like you have gotten an adequate dose of feedback for this session and will be able to move forward in your work to refine the document?
Yes, I appreciate the thorough discussion with council this afternoon. We have Planning Commission workshops next week, and there will be ongoing discussion over the course of the summer, and we will be going through the CEQA process as well. So staff has received sufficient direction, and I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
All right, with that, if there's nothing else, I will go ahead and recess our closed session with the reminder that our regular meeting starts at 5:30.